do a chunk here, because what I'd really like to do is finish out Numbers in 2 weeks, this week and next week. Because then April, 16th, 17th, whatever that Tuesday is, I need to cancel it. It's Asa's concert for school, so I'll need to cancel that one, and I thought that would be kind of nice to just finish up Numbers. We have a week off, and then we can head into Hebrews. So we're gonna try to do that. So this is, I kind of have it up here. You can see just what each chapter is kind of about. I have 31 on there in case we end up going into 31. I have some prepared, but not a lot. So that's just kind of what each chapter is about. So Numbers 26. Remember, we're coming off of the whole story with Balaam. That took us 3 weeks to do, so don't forget it. We had the Midianite and the Moabite women that were seducing Israel into sexual immorality and also idolatry, and God sends that plague. It is Phinehas who ends up stopping that plague by just showing that he has a heart for God's justice and divine wrath, and he kills that Israelite man and the Midianite woman. And so we're going straight from that into chapter 26, which is a census of the new generation, and it's by God's command to do this. Typically an older generation is known for wisdom, and the younger generation is seen as foolish and kind of stubborn. But really, the book of Numbers really confronts that and shows that it's quite opposite in this case. It's the older generation that's stubborn and marked with folly, and the new generation is learning from their parents' failures, and they're demonstrating faithfulness and experiencing great victories, and those are all things that the older generation did not demonstrate. So Numbers introduces this new generation with the book's second census. Remember, the first census was all the way in chapter 1 with the first census of that old generation, and now we have a second census here, which is the new generation. And then in the chapters that follow, it's a series of some narrative and discussing rituals and victories and things like that. So that's kind of where we're headed with this. Now, the opening and the closing verses of chapter 26 that are framing this census show that the Exodus generation is now gone. And I know that in previous discussions that we've had where we weren't really sure, is this the old generation that's having the unbelief? Is it the new generation that's having unbelief and they're acting like their parents? I still don't know the answer to that. It could be both. I have no idea who it was that was unbelieving in those times. But we do know here, because it's recorded, that now finally the entire old generation that came out of that came out of Egypt is completely gone. And that's exactly what God said would happen. Verse 1 says, after the plague, okay, so after that plague from chapter 25 that took place, and then verses 64 to 65 at the end of the chapter says, among these there was not one of those listed from the previous census. Not one of them was left. And so that tells us it's all done. There's even a new high priest, which is Eleazar, the son of Aaron. And the only ones from the Exodus generation that are left are Moses, who he's been told that he will die soon, and Joshua and Caleb, and it's because those are the two believing spies. Joshua will go on, obviously, to lead the people into the promised land. Caleb receives a portion of the land inheritance, and from as far as I know, he just dies an old man. So, okay, so the first census, if you guys remember, It was an enlistment for war. Remember, it was about seeing how many men were ready to be an active military. There was for, and it was also for organized movement. This second census is a little bit different, though. It gives these clan by clan details that were not part of the previous census. So does anybody know what this, reading from this, what's the distinctive purpose of this second census? Why is it different from the first, and purpose-wise? We know that we have a new generation, we've counted them. What's the purpose of counting everyone, though?
Kind of for like land distribution in the new.
Right.
When you're not new world, why am I trying to so when they get into
Yes.
the promised land.
Yeah, yes, that one.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's for the purpose of dividing up the land inheritance amongst all of the tribes. And so we're counting everyone out by tribe and by clans as well. There's a lot more detail on that. Joshua 13 to 22 kind of gives the detailing of the dividing up of land inheritance among the tribes. And so the land, this says here, it tells us just a little bit. Wait. Sorry, I'm gonna find it. Here it is. In verse 52. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, among these the land shall be divided for inheritance according to the number of names. To a large tribe you shall give a large inheritance, to a small tribe you shall give a small inheritance. Every tribe shall be given its inheritance in proportion to its list. But the land shall be divided by lot according to the names of the fathers of the tribes of their fathers. They shall inherit. Their inheritance shall be divided according to lot between the larger and the smaller. So the land is to be divided according to the number of people in each tribe. There's the reason for the census. Yet also it says it's according to lot. I think what this means is that the size of the tribal territory was determined by the number of the people in the tribe, but the location of the land was determined by lot. So that's kind of how they decided those things. And then, like I said, Joshua 13 and 22 gives a lot more detail on actually what happened according to the divvying up of things. Throughout this chapter, there are, I don't really know what to call them, three, they're not really stories, they're like little mentions of stories that are within it. And it's, let's take a look at them. It's verses 9 to 11 is the first one. So you've got, it's saying, these are the clans of so-and-so, and these are the sons of so-and-so, and it's, naming everything. Verse 9, the sons of Eliab, Nemuel, Dathan, and Abiram. These are the Dathan and Abiram chosen from the congregation who contended against Moses and Aaron and the company of Korah when they contended against the Lord, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up together with Korah when that company died, when the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a warning. But the sons of Korah did not die. Okay? Then you've got verse 19 is the next one. Okay, the sons of Judah were and Onan, and and Onan died in the land of Canaan. Does anyone remember that one? Judah, way back. What is this, Genesis? It was Genesis. Because he had his 3 sons. The first one was married, he was wicked, God killed him. The widow went to the next son. He was wicked, God killed him, Judah didn't want it going to the third son because he knew it was gonna happen. And so I don't remember what he did, but he sent her away and said oh, you can have him when he's older. But then he never really did give her the husband. And he's not making sure that she's taken care of. And she tricks him into sleeping with her and then gets pregnant by him. So that's that story, if you guys remember. Okay, so it's accounting for that. And then verses 59 to 61 is the next one. Okay. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt, and she bore to Amram Aaron and Moses and Miriam, their sister. And to Aaron were born Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died when they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord. Okay. So, those three little mini stories, I guess, what's the underlying theme of them? They clearly went out of their way to explain some things, to give more detail on those things. What's the underlying theme from each of those?
The punishment for disobedience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just all rebelled against God in some way.
Yep, that's exactly right. Each one of them thought that they knew better than God, and the moral of the story is, don't do that, right? But also explains why there are certain family lines that are lacking descendants. It's saying, well, there's a chunk missing there, and it's because they tried to go against God. Well, that didn't turn out too good, did it? Okay, so we can see that the total of the first census in chapter 1 was 603,550. The total of the second census here in chapter 26 is, verse 51, 601,730. This is, I find, very interesting. This is a net decline of 0.3% over 40 years. And this is, okay, it's not equal across all the tribes. There are some tribes that had, some increase, some decrease. The two most notable, if you actually took the time to look at the numbers, is Manasseh gaining 64%, while Simeon lost 63%. Those are the two most notable ones. And so God is blessing and cursing certain tribes, and it's all in relation to their trusting God and obedience to him. We saw time and time again there was issues in Simeon's tribe. Just recently, in chapter 25, the Israelite man who was taking the Midianite woman into his tent, that's from the tribe of Simeon. So it makes sense. It's worth noting, if you think about it, way back when Joseph is in Egypt and he calls his family to come be in Egypt, where I'm going to take care of you. Do you guys remember how many people were in his family at that point? It was 70. It was 70. And over 400 years, they amassed to this massive population. Now, something I don't know and I couldn't find was if 70 is only recording the males like they do in the census, the 600-something thousand, that's only the males that they're recording. Really, in reality, there's like 1 to 2 million people. I don't know if the 70 is only the males or if it's all persons accounted for in that. Still, even if you were to say, okay, you guys, I'm very proud of myself. I did some math today. It was hard. It was so hard. I even had Google helping me and it was hard, okay? But, okay, so if the number truly is 600,000, 70 to 600,000, then that's an increase of 757% over 400 years. Compare that to the 0.3% decrease over 40 years. Basically, Israel stopped growing. Their unbelief stunted their growth. A nation that grew 757% over 400 years, I think that's like almost 2% every single year. And now they've just nothing. I just think that's really, really interesting. It truly was the old replaced with the new, in a sense. I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
Well, they had a chunk during just that one plague.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
24,000.
Yeah.
Just chunks
Yeah.
that got wiped out, so
Yep.
that would take a bit to replace.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Even for as prolific as they are.
Fertile myrtles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so the old generation's finally gone. The new generation's fully realized they're ready for their marching orders. And so the next, whatever, 10 chapters, whatever this is, are all about, it's Moses' final preparations. He knows that his time is running short. And so he is just kind of trying to dot his I's and cross his T's as he is handing off the people to Joshua. And he's preparing the people for taking possession of the land. What does that look like? What are all of the struggles that they're going to encounter and questions that are going to come up along the way? So that's kind of what he is doing, making sure that everything's in place for when they arrive and they settle in Canaan, and he's kind of updating and fortifying some of the crucial laws as well. So, and then if you continue reading, Deuteronomy is a recap of Israel's history from Egypt onward, and it's a call to obedience because that's kind of the main structure there. Okay, so then Numbers 27, the daughters of Zelophehad. We've got, okay, so this naturally follows the census. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it naturally follows the census in the previous chapter, because it shows how complications may be worked out when people come into their inherited land that they're going to have in the land of Canaan. Any kind of complication might come up, and this is an example of one of them. So in Israel, and really in all the ancient Near East, land was normally passed from father to son or sons. They weren't passed to daughters because daughters would typically marry into other families, and if they inherited the land would get passed around, and staying within sons kept that family name, that family line together, and that was really, really important. So because of this principle, there's a question that's brought to Moses regarding the daughters of a man named Zelophehad who had no sons. So in a family of all girls, such as Zelophehad's, the family line would come to an end, and with it, the land inheritance would come to an end, or at least be in question as to what to do with it. So to avoid this result, God instructs Moses to transfer the inheritance of their father to or through these women. When the women marry, their husbands and children will be counted as part of the woman's paternal heritage. This is kind of similar to when a man takes his wife's surname, and that's kind of preserving her family name, her family line, and keeping it from extinction. There's actually an example of this in Nehemiah 7:63. I'll see if I can find it really fast. I gotta do the song in my head to find Nehemiah. Where's Nehemiah? Okay, it's back here.
What's the scripture?
Nehemiah
Oh, Nehemiah.
7. Man, I cannot find for the life of me Nehemiah. I really need to get those tabs.
I've got Nehemiah 7.
Oh, thank you. 7 verse 63.
63, and among the priests, the descendants of
Yeah.
I can't pronounce
I
all of
know.
these. You do really good pronouncing all these names. Somebody and somebody and somebody. A man who had married a daughter of Barzillai, the Gileadite, and was called by that name.
Yes, so that
Shoot,
last
why
one.
did I volunteer?
Never doing that again.
I didn't know it was gonna be like that.
You did great, you did great, just confident. So that last bit, it shows that there's the name, and it says, and they took it from, the daughter of so-and-so. And so
Man who
that's,
had married a daughter of.
right, exactly. So that's an example of
Yeah.
where that comes into play. Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Anytime.
Since I can't for the life of me find Nehemiah in my Bible. Okay, so this law also took other factors into consideration for future situations. If the man has no sons or daughters, then the inheritance went to his brothers, and if there's no brothers, then the inheritance went to the closest family relative. The primary objective is keeping the land within the family. That's the primary objective. Allowing daughters to inherit where there are no sons in the family created another problem. When they married, they would take the family land with them, thus destroying the father's estate. So to deal with this, Numbers 36 brings in additional rules regarding the marriage of daughters of inheritance or heiresses. So we get to Numbers 36 later. It takes this and it modifies it a little bit more. And that's exactly what Israel is having to do. They're about to come into possession of a land, and there's all these little nitty-gritty things that they've never had to deal with before. And so they're having to come up with solutions for some of these problems. So that's kind of what this is talking about. What are your thoughts on this? I know it's not the most exciting material in the world, but
We still do that today for some farm families, for farm ground.
really?
It doesn't go to the females. Get money, cash, but not the ground,
Wow, really?
because
Keep
then
that
it leaves. Or if a daughter get it, perhaps then her spouse will want to sell it or do whatever.
Right,
So there can be written stipulations, but
right.
there's various farm families, I know, that it just does not go to the daughter.
Interesting.
They just buy out the daughter, gets
Right,
an allotment of money, but not the ground.
right. Very interesting.
I didn't know anything about that. I was like, that doesn't sound right to me, but then it was like, okay,
Hit it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right,
yeah.
yeah. If the primary objective is
Yeah.
X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
then, yeah, yeah. I do think that, I know it's not like the most exciting thing, but I think that we can kind of see God's care for women in this. They weren't just thrown to the wayside. It's really, really rare, even today apparently, for women to inherit land. And so that really was revolutionary in its time, yeah. The second part of chapter 27 is Joshua succeeding Moses. So Moses is reminded that he's going to die soon, just short of entering the promised land. Who remembers why Moses is not going to enter the promised land?
Because he struck the rock.
He
Instead
wasn't
of
supposed
speaking
to.
to it.
That's right. So, actually interesting, Deuteronomy 3:23-25 tells us that Moses did ask God to relent from his judgment. He asked God, please, can you not do that? I have the quote here. It says, and I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that good hill country in Lebanon. But as we know, God did not relent, and Moses had to make himself content with knowing that he would see the land from afar, but never step foot in it. So, knowing that his time is coming to an end, Moses' concern is for the people. He knows that it's super important that they have someone who is leading them because, and here Moses uses a picture in verse 17. We can read that. Who shall go out before them and come in before them? Who shall lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be as a sheep that has no shepherd? So, what do you guys think about Moses describing Israel as sheep without a shepherd? What's the concern there?
They'll lose their way again. They'll veer away from God again pretty
Mhm.
quickly,
Yeah,
because they do pretty quickly and easily with a shepherd, so.
right. Yep, they're prone to wandering, and they're pretty easy targets, as we've seen. Yep. They're in constant danger without a leader. So what does the picture of the shepherd then tell us about the duty of spiritual leaders? What's their role?
Just like Charles would be our shepherd, just a leader, teacher,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of Jesus telling Peter, was it 3 times that he asked him, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you, and feed my sheep. He said that again and again, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. And so that's kind of what I think of as the shepherd is to take care of the flock in the way that it feeds them, it leads them, protects them from danger, from the wolves. And that's exactly what Moses was the most concerned about, because he knew, he'd been doing that for how many years with these people? He knew what the dangers were.
I was just thinking about how those groups of people, they didn't talk to God, did they? Moses was the one that was sent to talk to God to find out what to do next, or where to go next.
Mm-hmm.
The people didn't do that,
No.
right?
Not in the same way.
So now Joshua, he'll be the one that will go and talk to God and then come back and tell them what God said.
True, but let's look and see. There is a slight difference between Moses and Joshua. Let's see here. Okay, so we can start in verse 18. So the Lord said to Moses, "Take Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him. Make him stand before Eleazar the priest and all the congregation, and you shall commission him in their sight. You shall invest him with some of your authority, that all the congregation of the people of Israel may obey. And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. And at his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in, both he and all the people of Israel with him, and the whole congregation." So what are some of the similarities, and what are some of the differences we can see between Joshua and Moses right off the bat?
Well, Joshua has to go before a priest, the priest has to ask God using the Urim,
Yes.
whereas Moses could just talk straight to God.
Yes, that's exactly right. So that is the main difference there is Moses, he talked face to face with God. It's not going to be quite the same with Joshua. He's still going to have words from God, but it's not going to come in the same manner. That's not going to be the same communication. However, they are similar in the fact that both had an indwelling of the Spirit. It said that Joshua is a man in whom is the Spirit, and they both have the support of the high priest. So those are their similarities. And Joshua is going to be different from Moses, but he is still going to be a great leader of Israel, and he's going to foreshadow Christ in a new way. We've talked about how Moses is kind of a type of Christ. He's pointing forward to Christ in many ways, and Joshua will do the same, but it'll be in a different way. He will have a different picture of Christ. Any questions there? Okay, Numbers 28 and 29, it's just about the offerings and the feasts. So the sacrifice instructions in these chapters focus on the food offerings, which represent the daily, weekly, monthly, and seasonal communion of God dwelling with his people. And throughout these chapters, I think it's incredible just the sheer number of animals,
Yes.
grain, oil, and wine that is needed to fulfill what God is commanding is impressive, truly impressive. What does that tell you? That there's that much that is being required for them. This is all new amounts. So what's the purpose of that then? What does that tell you?
Well, the fact that they can even give that much, how much they actually have, like how fruitful is the promised land?
That's
compared to
exactly
what they're
right.
wandering
Yep.
around in right now.
This totally assumes that not only are they going to be in the promised land, because they're not there yet when these laws are given. That assumes they're going to be there, and it assumes they're going to be abundant and thriving. There's going to be great agricultural prosperity for them. And so God says, you're going to have plenty, you will also be giving plenty as well. By the way, Prosperity Gospel preachers really love to use these for their messages. I was just reading up on that the other day, and they love to use Old Testament passages because God talks about blessings for Israel, because it talks about, you giving and then receiving and all these things, and boy, they love to just use the heck out of those verses. It's like, well, different people, different time. wasn't intended like that. Okay, so chapters 20 and 29 concern the details of the sacrificial system that God instituted. Remember, he instituted all this back at the covenant that he made with Israel back at Mount Sinai. So it's all the same thing there. And these sacrificial offerings include the morning and evening daily offerings, the weekly Sabbath offering, the monthly offerings, the offerings at Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, which is Pentecost, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the special Sabbath on the 8th day of the end of the Feast of Tabernacles. Those are all just the scheduled ones. Those are just the scheduled ones. Then you've got, people who need to bring a sin offering. People who want to do a special thanks offering. I mean, there's all sorts of unscheduled ones as well. This is just the scheduled ones. It's constant. It's constant, constant, constant. What do you think was God's purpose on piling on all these designated offerings? What do you think the purpose of that is?
Would it be for repetition? Would it be some for just getting used to?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
It's part of your life, so it's not,
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, think about it. That's probably not the easiest thing to do. And so you're right. It's, you get out of habit of it, and I don't really feel like doing that today, And what's the focus that brings you back to every single time they're making an offering? What does that focus them on?
Back to God.
Right? And their need for God. It reminds them over and over and over how sinful they are, how holy he is, how much they are in need of him every moment of every day. And this is the most necessary thing for a people who is so prone. We just talked about, sheep without a shepherd. That this is exactly what sheep that are, prone to wandering and prone to danger and prone to, etc. That's exactly what they need.
That had to take so much time. I mean, so much time. I don't know what else
And
they
have to
did.
keep it all straight.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just think those priests were busy workers. Holy moly. Can you imagine all of the time that it took to do all of those sacrifices?
Where did all these
And
animals?
it's like blood and guts and.
Yeah, these people, like, so many animals.
Uh-huh.
And noisy it'd be too.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what? At the same time, it was also meant to be clean. I don't know how exactly, but there was a lot of washing of things. And there was, you know, the yucky stuff was done outside of the camp. So I don't know exactly what that looked like, but I just think it's incredible when you realize just the sheer magnitude of this operation, and yet how specific God was in all of the laws pertaining to it. Remember when we were going through all the laws and you're like, goodness, could you add any more rules to this? You know, this is the way that they're going to cut it, and this is the way that they're going to wash their hands, and this is and it's like thing after thing after thing. And then you realize, my goodness, the sheer magnitude of what they're doing here. Yeah, of course they need all these laws. Of course they need someone telling them every single step, because there's just so much to it, and it's so necessary. It's kind of mind-blowing a little bit. Okay, Numbers 30 is about vows. This next section outlines arrangements for individual offerings. So remember when we talked about like the Nazirite vow? That's kind of what this is talking about. It's not just Nazirite vows, but it's vows that are similar to that, where, you know, a person experienced a particular act of God's goodness, and he or she might want to vow an offering of praise, such as a promised amount that is offered to the Lord, saying, you know, Lord, I'm so grateful, I'm promising X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of what similar, so this is an example of what this would look like. I don't know what all the types of vows were that people made. I tried looking into it. It was really hard for me to pinpoint that, because the word vow is used in so many different ways in the Bible, so it was kind of hard for me to pinpoint exactly what the vows looked like. But the two things that I am aware of are just like the Nazirite vow, where someone was kind of dedicating themselves to Lord for a period of time for complete devotion. Remember, there was no cutting of the hair, no drinking of wine, and something else that they did, something else. So, you know, an expression of, I'm devoting myself to the Lord. Another thing would be, you know, thank you, God, I'm so grateful for X, Y, Z, so I'm promising X, Y, and Z to you as an offering, and there would be a time limit on that as well. So these are kind of, you know, certain laws that are related to that. In this passage, the basic law is given first, followed by a series of special situations. And these example situations reassure those who, though making a good faith vow to the Lord, are unable to follow through due to the restrictions imposed by someone else. And so these are the three examples that are given here. First is a daughter in her father's household, and that's verses 3-5. So if a woman vows a vow to the Lord and binds herself by a pledge while within her father's house in her youth, and her father hears of her vow and of her pledge by which she has bound herself, and says nothing to her, then all her vows shall stand. And every pledge by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her father opposes her on the day that he hears of it, no vow of hers, no pledge by which she has bound herself shall stand, and the Lord will forgive her because her father opposed her. So, really, really hard for us to not read this with Western eyes, which are so used to our, independence that we have. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, exactly. But essentially, the command refers to a woman who's young, unmarried, she's still living with her parents, and her father, being the head of the household, has the authority to approve or overrule the vow. I don't really know what the circumstances would be as to why he would do that. But being the head of the household, he is capable of doing that. And I think it comes down to almost like how a parent has the authority to veto certain things that our children, maybe your kid signs up for something and you're like, oh, actually, no. Or, your kid is like, I'm gonna give my best friend my brand new bike that I just got for Christmas. Well, we have the power as the parent to veto things. That's kind of what this is coming down to. I don't really know what the circumstances would be as to why he would veto a vow made unto the Lord, but apparently there were circumstances that came up because these laws are in place for a reason. So, the second example, verses 6-9, is a woman who makes a vow while part of one household but moves into a different household before its fulfillment. That's mostly talking about marriage. It might refer to how sometimes women went to go work for others in like not slavery, but like an indentured, contract kind of thing. Essentially, they were part of that household. But I think for the most part, this is talking about marriage. So you got this unmarried woman who took a vow approved by her father, but then was taken in marriage during the time which she is bound by the vow, and her new husband now has the authority. So the position of authority in her life moved from her father to her husband, and so now her husband has the has the right to say, no, this isn't going to work. One reason for that might be that whatever her vow was, I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, maybe that would be unhealthy for a new marriage. I don't know if maybe she vowed, I have no idea. I'm not going to make up things. But whatever it was, it might not be the best for a new marriage, okay? We're just going to say that.
I wonder what you're gonna come up with.
Keep guessing. I'm not gonna. I thought about this for a while, and I was like, I don't know what to say, but I'm not gonna make things up. Okay, the third one, verses 10-15, a wife and her husband's household. This command refers to a married woman who's under the authority of her husband. The headship of the husband is maintained, and he may overrule or approve of her vow. So, examples 1, 2, 3, an unmarried woman, the father has the right to veto it. The example 2 is a woman who's got a vow going on that her dad approved. New husband says no. Example 3 is a woman who's already married and she wants to do this vow and her husband says no. So, again, I know it's hard for us to look at this with Western eyes and understand where the goodness is on this. What are the reasons why people are vetoing those men? They're just, killing all the good things. I don't know exactly, but I do know that we can still see the goodness of God in this. For one, it was not the norm for women to be able to make vows. Women were not allowed to do that type of thing during that time frame. So for a woman to be allowed in Israelite laws to make vows, even Nazirite vows, that was really, really a big deal. So we do see the goodness of God in that he is caring after women's hearts. A woman who really wants to show her gratitude to God through the expression of a vow, and God is allowing for that. But there is also put in place an authority. And so God is saying, yes, I care about your heart, but I also care about respecting parental authority and respecting the marriage union as well. So, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on this? It's kind of a weird one.
I don't take any offense to it. I mean, it's in the Bible. It's what God set up. It's good. He made it look good, so, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. agree, yeah.
It's hard to see, like you said, from our eyes, I think, because like the way marriage is set up now, it's just our culture sees it so differently, but it was intended for both of the man and woman to give their whole selves to each other, so the man is supposed to be doing what's best for his family.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there is that mutual love and respect, so that's not
Right.
always here now, so for us, it's hard to see that necessarily, like, why are you telling me what to do? But,
We've
you know,
been
I don't know, it's
so-
just different now.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been so conditioned to think that men vetoing any women's rights is so, it's just wrong. It's just wrong no matter what it is. And so for us to read this, it can be kind of difficult, but I think that you're completely right in saying just, we don't maybe have to have the explanation for it all, because we know that God was good in his law giving. We know that he was caring for all, all that was in the parties, everyone, the men, the women, etc. He was caring for everyone in doing so. And so, yeah, apparently there were circumstances where this was needed, so. Okay, so we made it through all those chapters. Good job, us. So then what we'll do next week is we will tackle 31 to, 36? Yep. 31 to 36, and we'll finish out Numbers, and then we're gonna have that week off, the 16th, 17th, whatever that Tuesday is, and then we'll head straight into Hebrews. All right, any questions? All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're really, really thankful for you being with us tonight. Thank you for your holy word that you have blessed us with, for the wonderful privilege of having insight into your heart and into your care for your people through all time. We ask, Lord, that you would remind us that we are a people who need a shepherd, and just how much we need to be reminded of that over and over again. And remind us also, Lord, that we don't always have to have the answers or an explanation. We don't have to give an account for your choices and your actions. It's a trusting relationship that you are good, truly good, and that you care for your people. And so we ask that you would remind us of that as we go about our week. Help us to be a blessing to others, and that they see your goodness through us. In Jesus' name, amen.